Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. Just a quick note to say, you might be hearing that I'm a little hoarse this week. Yes, I've been fighting losing my voice, but not to worry, the episode you're about to hear does not have that. I was totally fine when we recorded it. So just this intro. So back to it. So on the show this week is editorial and commercial photographer Bonnie Tsang. You may not immediately know her name, but if you're on Pinterest, there's a great chance you've interacted with her. Because Time Magazine recently named Bonnie as one of the top 30 Pinterest curators to follow, which makes sense because she has 7.1 million followers. Or maybe you're an Instagrammer that loves beautiful photography. With Bonnie's over 81,000 followers in artful photography, you might just be following her there. In this conversation, Bonnie and I talk about how she's become a professional photographer, how she evolves her style and work, and life as a new mother again. A standout point here, Bonnie didn't go to school for photography. So to hear her story and accomplishment, it's a real-life proof of how determination and hard work can really pay off. It was so good chatting with Bonnie and finally connecting with her. And I think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. So everyone, meet Bonnie. Bonnie, it is so great to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we were just talking about this, that we met through a mutual friend, Tony Thuray, who actually was on the show much earlier when I first started. So I didn't know anything about your work before that, and Tony and I chatted about it, and I became an admirer of your work right away when I started to look you up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's the thing I think is really interesting, Bonnie. So you clearly are very well known through social media channels, especially Pinterest and Instagram. And the gift of social media is everything seems amazing and beautiful when you're in social. Like everybody's life is perfect. So, but I also know that you have a new baby in the house. So
Yeah.
I started to think about this, like life has to be a little hectic. So not that I'm looking for you to uncover and dispel all of this, gorgeous art and beauty that you're sharing, but I'm so interested in hearing the story of like how your story really comes together. So I'm going to start with kind of a big question. Why do you do what you do? Meaning like, why a photographer? Because I know, from doing a little research, this wasn't your first move into a career. It was a little bit afterwards. So why photography for you?
I feel like it's a funny story now looking back. My father actually is a photographer his whole life. And, when we're growing up, I just instantly stay away from photography. I didn't even want to get a camera. I didn't want to know anything about it because basically he does it. So I want to be something different. But my first child, who is now 12, when she was born, I started just like every single mom. They should take pictures of their kids, and I do it every single day. That my dad was like, see, you're interested in photography. And he went and bought me a really nice DSLR with the nice lens. I had no idea how to use it because I was using a point and shoot. And no idea how to use it to a point where I didn't know my lens was set on manual. And I kept taking pictures. I'm like, this camera sucks. Why is it so blurry?
I love that.
To like one point realize, I should switch it to automatic. That's how little I know about photography. But I just keep shooting and then venture out into shooting nature, just everything that catch my eyes. I just try with my camera. And eventually my friends were like, hey, can you come photograph my kids? Okay, can you come photograph their birthday party? Or every time I go out with my friends, I would just start taking pictures just to like document it. And, and more friends asked me to do it. And I thought, okay, maybe this is something I can pursue. And at the same time, I was getting a divorce and becoming a single mom. And in my head, I was like, I need a side job, like something on the weekend where I can work extra and make extra money. Because that time I was doing a 9 to 5, just office, cubicle, boring job. And I thought, really naive, thinking, well, on the weekend I can go shoot weddings. Weddings probably make a lot. Like, without shooting any wedding, no experience, I just went in. I just started contact anyone and said, hey, if you have friends getting married, I would shoot it for free. And I got 2 gigs from that and no experience. All the pictures were like trying to be all artsy, like just people's feet, the bride's back. And then, I went onto some forum and showed all these pictures. I was so proud of them, so artsy. And people were like, you know, it's a wedding. You need to see people's faces. These pictures suck. Oh, and from then on, I was like, oh, I should go learn how to shoot weddings. So I just started doing second shooting and like working and learn a lot through that. And eventually just somehow became a full-time photographer that I was able to quit my regular full-time job. So that's kind of a backstory of photography to me.
It's so interesting. I love how you did. Well, when you said the, wasn't laughing just with you. I was like, oh, when you said the manual and automatic and it's like, this camera sucks. I was like, oh yeah, I've done that. When I first got a nice camera too, I'm like, why does this camera not work well? Maybe because I didn't know how to use it. So I absolutely do understand that. So I'm interested. I mean, I have so many questions about this just because I love that it sounded like you kind of jumped in, you wanted to figure it out, and you just did it. Maybe even, I'm curious about, maybe it was during that time, or maybe it's later. What about photography connects you? Like, what's the driver behind wanting to do it full time now? Because I could understand it was like this part-time thing. Sure, shoot weddings, and you needed money, but is there a driver or a thing that kind of, like, is there a purpose behind it also for you?
I found myself loving documenting life, like a daily life. Not necessarily everything has to be pretty and beautiful. I just like capture certain moments where I can look back to. And I think my clientele love that kind of take as well. So I feel really fortunate that I get to be hired to do things to just to capture moments, which is amazing. And I don't even know how I be able to do that. Now that I'm in this world, I realize like, okay, if I find the right client, then they'll hire me for what I'm good at. But on the outside, like the Bonnie from 10 years ago looking in, like, why would anyone want to pay money for you to do this? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Do you think that's also like that 10-year ago, thought of why would anybody hire me to actually do this? Is that just because, well, I ask this because my question is really around, is it that it's like this belief in ourselves, like, wait, I didn't even know what I was doing, or and now 10 years later, you really do. I think of this as almost like this imposter syndrome, like, am I really a photographer? Or it takes a while to actually believe in that. Is that kind of where you were going, where it was like, wait, I didn't know what I was doing, or is it something else?
Yeah, definitely. Even today, I still question myself. Just a few days ago, I was asking a friend, I was like, how come every time someone introduced me, they would naturally say, this is Bonnie, she's an amazing photographer. I'm like, where did the amazing come from? I think it's because I didn't go through education. I feel like I just stumbled upon, just like what I said earlier, I didn't even know how to work a camera.
Yeah.
And so constantly questioning myself, like, hey, are you good enough? Are you legit?
I love that. That's so true.
But I remember a really great photographer that he's like a mentor to me. He actually went to school, and I asked him, I'm like, should I go to school for this? And he was like, well, do you know how to turn on a computer? Do you the camera? Do you know how to where to press the button? I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, well, then don't go, because what you have is your eye. Once you go to school, it becomes a very technical thing. It might change your eye. So he actually suggested me not to go. And I think when we say to trust the eye, it's very artsy. It's very like out there. It's not a solid thing like a graduation, like a diploma, I think.
Yeah, I get that.
If I have the actual diploma, I can probably say, hey, I know what I'm doing. But because I don't have one, I think I constantly question myself, like, well, how good is your eye? Like,
It's interesting. It's like external, legitimacy. It's somebody has to validate. I absolutely understand this. When you start your own thing or doing your own whatever creative thing it is, you do question like, wait, have I really done this? Am I very good at this? I think that's funny. That probably gets in the way for a lot of creative people that maybe haven't gone to a formal education.
yeah.
Well, then that makes me think about as you were going along, 10 years or so or more, what kind of struggles did you have along the way? Was there, because, you go from this wedding experience and then, doing second shooting and learning, and it sounds like you're such a self-learner, and correct me if I'm wrong with that, but it really sounds like, hey, you're going to figure it out. You're going to keep going. Was it like, I'm going to ask this question, but I don't think it's really true. Like, was it all perfect going along the way? And you're like, oh, I got every job and it was all perfect. Or was there some ways along your journey that can also help you understand maybe there's some struggles or ways you need to change things or shift things? Like, what lessons did you learn along that way?
I think I'm constantly changing and shifting, even though things seem to go really well. I think for me is I can't sit still. I can't keep doing the same thing. I stopped doing wedding because every wedding became so similar. It's like, oh, cake cutting, time to throw the bouquet. It becomes very systematic, where I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem to work for me, because I feel like I know exactly what to capture now. There's no more surprise. So I'm constantly shifting and also trying to find my own style. I feel like I haven't figured out my own style. And a lot of people look at my work, they instantly could say a few words. It's light, it's airy, it's very minimalistic. But I feel like that's not me.
That's interesting.
Or that's not fully me. I think there's part of me I love really dark and underexposed pictures. But that because I never bring it out to show the world. And so I'm just kind of constantly trying to look for who is me as an artist. So I'm just constantly changing.
Did you have an end mind in game? Like when you first started this and you were obviously, we go back to that the wedding photographer piece, and it was about earning a little extra money, and then you started getting further into it. And as you started to realize that this was serious, like it was a career and you could do this, did you have some end goal in mind of like what you were aiming for or what success looked like in this for you?
No, I just know I want to keep growing as in keep learning, keep doing bigger things. And I feel like I'm not doing big enough things yet. So I'm just constantly keep thriving for the next thing. I think that's where I'm at all the time.
I kind of love that actually more than a big end goal, because success, I don't even use the word success very much because it just seems very financial to me. And I don't think that's what success always looks like. But I love this like keep growing versus this like once I hit this thing, I'm good. It's more about I just want to experience great stuff and do really amazing work, whatever's interesting and different. And that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah. And constantly being challenged.
What about now through this time, and you've done this for quite a long time. You have a 12-year-old, your first child, and your newest one is like something like 13, 14 weeks or so, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I was kind of like trying to do math in my head.
Pretty good.
So has that also, becoming a mother twice and, life changes as we get older and have different experiences. Has that also affected the way that you look at your photography, your art, your career as well? Has that helped shaped any of that?
Yes, definitely. I think having a child, the way it changed you is it changed the way you see the world. Because the past few years, I feel like I'm just doing this to, sound really shallow, but I feel like I'm just trying to make money, make ends meet, pay my bills. But suddenly, the past 13 weeks, I feel like I've been like trying to explore more different things. I have new ideas, and maybe the lack of sleep do that to your brain.
I love that's honest.
But like suddenly it's just like, oh, I'm excited to try new things. But then at the same time, I don't have the time to because I'm like, my hands are full with this little one right now. But yeah, suddenly my ideas are like coming back and I feel really excited. I think having a kid can do that to you. And plus with my 12-year-old, she is also a creative, and the way I hand her a camera and the way she capture the moments are very different. For a child, they take one shot, she hand back the camera to me, and I was like, you don't need to take another shot. She's like, no, it's perfect. She didn't even need to look. And I look at her and I was like, wow, why can't I do that anymore? I used to do that when I was a newbie photographer. I'll be like so proud of my work and so excited to show the world. And now I became very tough on myself. And with this newborn, I feel that again, like, oh, try new things. It's okay to fail. Like, who cares what people think?
Oh.
It's really interesting. Maybe this whole idea can help people give the idea of like, you can have kids.
It's not just for...
it's okay to have kids.
You're right. It benefits you in so many other ways. I love... at first I love the confidence of, your daughter. She's like, no, it's perfect. I don't even look at it. Yeah, I wish I could be like that. It's a really interesting perspective, Bonnie, that you just shared there. I am very much what you just described of like critical of my work, and it's not perfect yet, and I'm hard on it. I want more, and I keep thinking maybe that's experience. But you just made me think a little bit more about maybe I'm doing that too much. Maybe we just need to like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to like, just go out there and say, no, this is great. Don't over criticize it yet. Like, just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's important. Maybe keeping the eyes of a child, in my mind as I'm doing something. That's smart.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me think a little bit of, so I'm going to go over to social because this is something I'm just really interested in, and I'm just so personally interested in this. And I kind of hinted toward it about the everything's perfect on social because I do that as well. Everything I post is pretty darn like, oh, things are amazing. And, they are. Mm-hmm. Life is good. But here's the thing I'm really curious about. So I'm going to take a step back and just, set the stage a little bit. A little of the research I had looked at was, so you've been sharing socially, for a long time. And I think this goes back to your story about taking pictures of your daughter when she was small. And I think you started like on Flickr and then, Instagram, Pinterest, all these different great places. And you have a ton of following. So I don't want to understate that for anybody who's listening. Like, I think the last time I looked, you had like 7.1 million people following you on Pinterest, which that has to feel like a little like, not, I wouldn't say like it's like amazing. It's more like a little like, wow, that's a lot of people. Like, it's crazy. But I'm curious about that is, do you find this balance at all about what you share? Like what you really want to share versus now you have this large following and what you should be sharing? Like how do you balance that if that's a problem at all or an interest?
Huh. That's a good question. I think in the beginning, ba- let's backtrack a little bit. I got into social media because my sister, who her job is she's into PR, she's marketing.
Mm.
Every time some sort of new social media come out, she'll be like, "Get on it," and I'll just blindly get on it.
I love that you just did it. Okay, sure.
Like Twitter, and she told me to get on it, and I got on it, and I just like constantly. I realized these social medias are my outlets because when Twitter was out, I was still working a 9 to 5 job and trying to promote my side job, which is a photography. So the only way for a single mom, no money, no time, my only way was through Twitter while I'm like working and in my cubicle. And I would just tweet a lot. I would just say the most random things. I would even say things like, "Oh my gosh, I worked so hard today that I forgot to go pee." Like I would tweet something like that. But she's the one who would be like, text me right away and say, "You cannot say that on social media." So I think it's through experience and some sort of like teaching through whoever that comes along. Sometimes someone make a comment and you're like, "Oh, you're right, I shouldn't do that," or "Oh, you're right, I should do that more." So it's through experience and a lot of tweaking through the way. And now I know what not to say and what to say. Like I would never post a picture of my bathroom saying I forgot to pee. So, and now I know what to say that goes with some sort of marketing for my business,
Mm-hmm.
and also sharing things that are more inspirational than just a random, no meaning thing. Yeah, so I think it's all through experiences.
Has the inspirational piece that caught my ear a little bit? You're sharing a little bit more inspirational pieces. Have you found that even sharing those sorts of things have even maybe added more inspiration to your life? Because you're now not saying that you weren't inspirational or positive before, but if we're portrayed that way and that we share that sort of information, I wonder if that has a dual effect back on you about always thinking about being positive and inspirational.
Oh, most definitely. I think a lot of times when I post something on Instagram and with the message like "you can do this," it's actually for myself. Maybe on that certain day I feel like down and I have this thoughts in my head like "it's okay, Bonnie," and then I would post that, and then but it became resonate to a lot of people, which just go to shows that we all have issues. Everybody have problems, and every day is not perfect. And it's good to, while inspire, like trying to inspire myself in a way and inspire others too.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I asked that specifically because I've noticed that even with myself, that I thought, oh wow, it actually has lifted me up a little bit more. And it's almost like
Yeah,
it's like a gift that you're giving yourself.
yeah.
So I read somewhere about you that because you are definitely a photographer, right? You're editorial, you're commercial, you do all this wonderful work, but it also looks like maybe I saw something about you as a curator as well. Maybe that flows into the Pinterest world.
Hmm.
Because I think that a lot of the, I want to say influence, but I think it's just also natural, just what you gravitate toward. It just appears that way is you have a certain style, not just the photography you take, but the things that you like, the things that you're attracted to. So is that part of kind of your world as you're sharing information is also to curate or share things that are of interest. So it's not just here's what my art is, but here's like things that also connect with that, maybe can lift you up. How does that package together? Is that how you're, I guess, showing up socially as a curator and a photographer and more?
I think there's more to that. Um, I love pretty things to begin with. I grew up with my dad, who's a photographer. My mom also an artist, so we always being surrounded by pretty things. Even pretty things, meaning finding some sort of ruin, can be pretty. But if you know where to look, um, so for me. It does become a package because I think in the beginning I did not know that. Because a lot of times the society right now is driven with so much information. We see so many pictures. We like don't even need to leave the house anymore. Um, and I would just love every single thing. One minute I love all white. Next minute I'm like, I love rainbow color. And you just don't know what exactly that who is you, like which one is you.
Yeah.
So in the beginning I would pin the most random things like rainbow color cake with like 7 layers of colors, or a very cutesy illustration that's my daughter would love. But eventually one day I just felt really down because I felt like, who is me? I'm constantly questioning that. Who is Bonnie? Who is Bonnie? And I suddenly stumbled upon this interview by Tom Ford, the
Oh,
fashion designer.
yeah. Oh, yes, I know him.
And the way he talked about how he does things, who is he as a fashion designer, he was saying something that he was like, I'm just a commercial designer. I'm not gonna be like, I would never design a suit with 3 sleeves. Like I'm just a very commercialized designer, and he knows exactly who he is, and he's great with that. And the sort of style he has, very elegant, sophisticated. And I was like so inspired by that interview that I thought, hey Bonnie, like you can be that too. Like you can be Tom Ford of photography. And I suddenly like drawn to that. I realized, wait, okay, while I love looking at this rainbow cake, I realized who I am is I love dressing in black. I love with a hint of something sparkly, like not too much, just very subtle. I love minimalistic, anything that's minimal, have a minimal take with it, but elegant. And so I start to just streamline everything, the way I shoot, the way I dress, the way I pin. And suddenly everything comes together. And I realized, okay, that is Bonnie at this moment. The Bonnie at this moment, this is it. And so everything just now comes together. And as soon as someone see a picture, they'll notice, okay, this is Bonnie's work. Okay, this is Bonnie's pin. Like,
Mm-hmm.
which works out great. And I'm so happy that I took the time to figure that out.
It's so smart. Hone it in, and I really love that you actually Tom Ford with that interview was your inspiration. I adore his stuff.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. I think it does really make a lot of sense to hone in on. Sure, you may like all these other things, but is that truly who you are and what you want to be known for? Speaking of style and influence that, you mentioned your father and his photography. I'm wondering if, as you started to learn more and more, obviously he gave you the camera, but did he also influence your work, or maybe even, maybe not directly, but maybe indirectly, just based on things that you saw that he was doing?
Yeah, I think most likely. Sometimes I look through his old work with the film photos, black and white, and the way he captures shadow and the way he frames certain things are just amazing. Um, and I not try to do that, but I think the way I see kind of influenced by him as well. Um, but the funny thing is that while I try different things, now I'm into a lot of negative space in my pictures. He would download my picture and he would recrop it for me to make it less negative, has less negative space, because he thinks, the right way to photograph is your subject. It's always in the center or something like that. And sometimes we fight about stuff like that. But other than that, I noticed that, yeah, his old work really does influence me a lot.
What about anybody else? You've talked about Tom Ford was a little bit different because it was about honing your own interest and style. But are there other, and it doesn't have to be just photographers, but I'm curious about who else influences your work in the past or today?
There's one friend, his name is Kieran Lowe, and I met him through Flickr back in old days when my first daughter was only like 5 years old. His work is amazing. He would just capture very mundane things, and he would focus on things that people don't notice. And that influenced me a lot, because I was like, wow, you really could see beauty in the little tiniest thing that people don't even pay attention to. So he influenced me a lot, but he shoot for personal enjoyment, so he's not a pro.
Sure. Well, and that part probably doesn't even matter. It's just more about and what he was doing and how he did it.
Yeah, definitely.
What about now that you've been doing this for so long? It's like you talked about, now having your newest child has kind of given you new ideas or look at things a little bit different way. Even besides, not everybody's going to have a child that often. We can have them all the time to keep the ideas going. But what kind of keeps you energized, or how do you stay fresh in interest? You talked earlier about like weddings, because it was systematic and that was a little boring. So I wonder if it's maybe I'm leading you here, maybe it's like trying new things and stuff. But I am curious about what keeps you energized and inspired in your work.
Yeah, I keep trying new things. Like at the moment right now, I am trying to ask the same question again. Like, okay, who are you now? Now that you're having a newborn, you're and your age. It's like it's been 8 years since I started photography. Like, okay, you've mature, you know more. Okay, now who are you again? So I am actually in the middle of like trying new things and look at my work again and say, okay, this didn't work. Or something I still love, but then, okay, it's not you anymore. Maybe you shouldn't do that anymore. So it's like a lot of questioning. I'm just constantly questioning myself and judging my own work, and then look at other people's work and see, okay, what's now? What's new? What's drawn to me now? I constantly do that. Every 5 years.
I was just going to ask, is that something that just naturally, like that evolution of wondering, wait, is this still me? Or is it also something that you predetermine, like, yeah, every few years I really need to take a step back and look? How does that happen for you? Is it natural evolution or something you really plan for?
Very natural. I think every few years I would just start being like going internal, and I don't talk to anybody. Closest friends start to notice that, okay, when she doesn't reach out, she's onto something. Let's not bother her. So I'm at this moment right now questioning. I think that's the idea of like growing, because as soon as you become comfortable, your world just stays that way, and our world can constantly grow bigger and bigger. And I feel like now is the time again to expand and try something new. And take a leap of faith, like, because it's a risk to try new things, and maybe a whole set of different followers, whole different set of audience, whole different set of clients now. So, and they might not accept you. So it's like taking a risk, which is scary. But to me, it's like, okay, I can't stay still at this little box. I feel like I've outgrown it. I need to find a good box.
It almost sounds like, I mean, this all makes sense to me, but it sounds like to me that you have this really interesting blend of like photography is clearly a career for you, but at your heart, I mean, I'm making this up, but at your heart, you're an artist, and it's like you can't continue the same career because you have to shift and evolve and find the things that you can express yourself and show the world in a different way. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, very true.
I think that's so interesting and smart to even acknowledge because I think for people that are driven by creativity, it's like you said, once you get comfortable, then you're not growing, you're not doing anything else. And if you are an artist kind of at heart, that's why you're doing what you do, then you have to like acknowledge and accept and embrace that you should probably find the growth spots, keep going, even if it feels scary.
Yeah. I think that's why sometimes it's hard to find balance between, okay, business versus artist. Like it's hard to melt the two together. So it's a lot of risk taking.
Yeah, especially with the business part, like you said earlier, it's like sometimes it's putting food on the table, making ends meet. Sometimes you just have to work. So you don't always get a choice to like be super expressive and do the things that we love all the time. But sometimes
right.
Yeah, you got to like shoot weddings. I'm not saying that those are the bad things, but that if that's not where you want to be, sometimes you may have to do that stuff.
Right. But I think also is that, the more you know what you want and you don't want, now you're able to say, okay, I will take this wedding because nicest couple, their idea sounds so fun, or the people that they're hiring are creative. So it's going to be a fun wedding to shoot. Then, yeah, I would definitely say yes to that. So it's a lot of like, now I know what questions to ask my clients to know, that in a way help me grow as an artist. Yeah, so that's that.
It's true. It's also not so black and white. That's what I kind of got out of that too, was like, yeah, maybe the job isn't what you thought it would be, but if you know more, you could ask actually smarter questions to figure out maybe there is room to be really creative or do something a little different. So the more you know, the better it can help. So what holds you back in your career? If there's moments where you pause because you know that you need to, like, who's Bonnie now? But what gets in your way of growth and doing good stuff?
I think the reality things, like, all right, you need to pay bills, Bonnie. You have to think about money. You need to think about paycheck. Then suddenly exactly that comfort zone where you can, get a few paycheck, which is kind of sad to talk about. It's not glamorous anymore. It's not pretty anymore. But that certain things you can go back to and just do it and, get the bills paid, have extra money cushion. I feel like that's the sad part. Like, that's what holding me back.
Is it then that finding the balance, like you can still do that, but don't get too, like you said, comfortable in that space? Like keep pushing to grow?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, like, what's next for you? Is it a different style? Is it different types of projects? Like, what's the future hold for you in your kind of art and photography?
At the moment, I'm trying to come up with a book. I have this amazing book agent who's been so patient with me. She was like, okay, you should have a book by now. But then because I'm so critical of myself, I just constantly kept telling her, no, I'm not. No one's going to buy it. No one's going to care. So I'm trying to push myself to go out there and like just try this thing. So it's a very slow process right now. But in my head, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter if it's fair or not. Just do it. So at the moment, I'm pushing myself. So the book, and I'm also trying to grow my business where I could be more behind the scene, and maybe hire help because I haven't had help for so long. I'm just on my own. That I feel like I've reached a limit where I am not, I cannot inspire myself like I did before. Now I'm actually looking forward to hire younger people or like someone with the fresh ideas and to work with them. Um, so that's two things I'm trying to go after right now.
I think this, especially that second one, so smart. You get to a point where you get maxed out with your time and you're doing all the, even the work that you have to just like just the work that has to be done, but it's not the creative, inspiring stuff, and it kind of drags you down a little bit.
Yeah.
So a couple questions that we usually like to end with are things about some advice. What advice would you give to someone like wanting to make photography part of the career? So this could be they want to be a photographer, or maybe they just want to start to add photography into their career. What advice would you give them to somebody starting out?
I would say just be curious, be nice to people, reach out, but be respectful. A lot of time I get email saying, "Hey, can we go have coffee? Let me pick your brains." I think a lot of creative people get a lot of that kind of email. And not everyone has that much time to, even though I want to, I just can't. I have two kids now, and I have a family and with business, and also I want to give time to myself. So there's not a lot of time left in a day where I can just go and help people. And so what I learned as a beginner back then was I never write to anyone to say, "Hey, can I treat you to coffee? Can I pick your brain?" I basically just watch from the side. I would follow their, back then was Flickr. I would follow their Flickr. I would look at their blog. I would read what they write. Sometimes they review little things about, the behind the scene of work. And that's how I learn. And I always just like give people space with people I want to learn from. And just by observing, observe a lot and be respectful, be curious. And when I was second shooting, I didn't try to think about my own portfolio. My main point was, okay, I'm here to second shoot. I'm here to shoot something that you need for your client, like working for someone, instead of just thinking about me. By helping the other person, the main photographer, I end up learning instead of just going there and think about, okay, what's in this for me? What am I going to get? Like, I don't think about that. And from that, I get to learn a lot. And yeah, that's how I learn.
I especially love that second piece there. Yeah, like not what's in it for me, but just really go in there and help, because you're going to learn as you do that. But just maybe don't focus on yourself so much. That's probably really hard for people to do.
Yeah. Plus, when you don't think about me, at the end, people actually wanted to help you more. It's in a way, it's like a back and forth. Like I give you something and you give me something, and like a natural force, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that comes through, right? That when you're really authentic about it and you're there to help and do great stuff, people want to help you a little bit more. So if you had to go back, 8-10 years ago, or over that time frame of your career, if there's anything you could change that you would do a little bit differently, or if you knew something, what is it that you would change or you wish you knew back then?
I don't think I want to change anything. Maybe burn less bridges.
I'm curious. Expand a little bit more on that, because that sounds amazing. I want to know what that means.
I mean, when you go out into real world working with people and you realize, okay, this person is toxic and I should stay away, instead of like talking to the person or deal with it or like take it as a lesson to learn from it, I run away. I would just stop talking to this person And suddenly they have no idea, like, wait, why isn't Bonnie talking to me anymore? And to me, I thought, okay, by cutting this person off, I'm doing myself some own good. But now I look back, I was like, no, you will always run into the same problem because you never acknowledge or try to learn from it. So if I get to go back, I would try to face head on and like, hey, or talking to this person, or like find a different way to work with this person instead of just cutting this person completely. Because everyone has something to give, like whether it's a lesson or something that they're good at. You know, everyone has a good and bad side. I have the worst side too. So
I love that you just said that.
So like I'm trying to learn from that and not cutting people left and right.
I get it though. You know, I mean, I get your point too. When, if somebody was toxic or it's not working out, you're cut it out. That sounds good initially, but I also really love, like, it's a lesson, right? Like you said, if you're going to deal with the same problem constantly unless you deal with it. That's like just great life advice. It's not even just about career, right?
You can't ever run from anything.
It's true, because it's going to show back up. You just don't know about it. That's a perfect way to end this. I love that. Well,
don't burn bridges.
Don't burn bridges. That'll be the headline. So, Bonnie, I know that it'll be very easy to probably find you online for our listeners, but where would you recommend for anybody listening to find you online? What's the best places to follow along?
I think for now would be just Instagram with my handle Bonnie Tsang.
Great. And also, I know that you do have a website that you do blog every so often as well.
Yes, which is... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, well, we can point there too if that's something of interest. I know that's why I read up on some of the baby things recently as well. So that was actually a fun insight for me.
Yeah, that's beforbonnie.com. That's my personal blog.
Oh, perfect. Well, great. Here's what we'll do. We'll definitely put links to you, including Instagram and such, and we'll put that in the show notes, and we'll put it on the website for people to follow along. And let me just say, this has actually been a lot of fun. This was like my version. I'm air quoting, you can't see this, but it was my version of like picking your brain over coffee. I think just a lot of people would be just so interested in how somebody, learns this art and exercise and skills on their own and moves forward because it's not just about the success of the followers, but it's also about being really true to things that you enjoy and love and seeing the world in your way. So I knew that other people would want to hear it, but I also was super curious, and I thought, oh, maybe it'll be a dual win over coffee, air quote. So Bonnie, thank you so much for really doing this and sharing some of the behind the scenes about how you've, brought your art to life.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the show this week. What'd you think? Great story? Any new ideas? If you're new to the show, subscribe to receive a new episode each week automatically. And if you love the show and you want to help us out, go tell a friend about it. Then go write us a quick review on iTunes. Both of these favors really help us get the word out. If you want to follow along with me and see behind the scenes fun and more, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher. That's MECHRISTOPHER. To get even more inspiration and updates, follow Accidental Information on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Information, and on Twitter at Accidental Info. We also post original articles about following your passions and getting creative, and more information about each episode at accidentalinformation.com. Thanks for joining me this week. Now let's keep chatting online, and then I will talk to you again next week.